Portals, Chapter 1, A Hand in Fate. Nia's body rocked with the sway of the rickety bus. In an attempt to get her mind off of what she was doing, she stared out the window to her left and admired the handful of stars in the sky. While clutching her little book bag, she tried to ignore the shaking of her sweaty hands, the bobbing of her leg that seemed to have a mind of its own, and the pit of anxiety, a dark, sticky feeling that festered in her chest, spreading quickly all over her body. Despite all the worry, Nia tried to shake it off. This would be fine. Everything would be fine. Oh, who was she kidding? This was the stupidest idea in the history. She would be grounded for months. No, years for this. It's only a day, she thought, trying to reassure herself, which didn't help at all. Sighing quietly, Nia let her chin rest in the palm of her hand as she stared out at the sky that seemed to be lit up more by streetlights than stars. Nia thought about the events that led to where she was now. Much to her surprise, she didn't feel an ounce of guilt. In fact, she felt alive. More alive than she had felt in the past week, the past month, or even the past year. Hell yeah, she was terrified of the consequences that were sure to bite her in the ass after all this. But she felt so relieved at the thought of freedom, even if it was for only a day. Maybe she was a bad kid, and maybe her parents didn't deserve this. But she couldn't care any less. Nia was free tonight, even if that meant she'd be trapped tomorrow. She just couldn't stand staying in that awful place she called home anymore, with those awful people that she called parents. Home never felt like home to her. It was just a house that she always dreaded walking back to after school. So, she left. The idea of her being a runaway put a smile on Nia's face. Oddly enough, normal people wouldn't approve of such a title over their heads. But then again, Nia was not a normal person. As the bus slowed to a stop, Nia gave the driver a half-hearted thank you and stepped off the ride. She looked around at the vaguely familiar place she was in. Clutching the straps of her book bag, she slowly treaded the ghost town. While warily walking down the sidewalk, Nia nearly jumped out of her skin at the buzzing of her phone. Her heart sank. Was it her mom? She swallowed a lump in her throat as she slowly pulled it out of her pocket and read the contact. One unread message from Comet. Nia let out a sigh of relief. It was just Cat. Comet was just a nickname that she came up with, and it kind of stuck. Quickly, Nia checked her surroundings before reading the text. Are you here yet? Nia blinked and texted back. Yeah, I'm on my way now. She paused for a moment, then typed again. You sure you want to do this? Her phone instantly pinged back. I want to, but I don't know. I feel so Nia wasn't exactly sure what was supposed to feel like, but she tried to sympathize nonetheless. Do you want to go back home? I'll walk you back. No, I'm gonna suck it up. I swear, I'll have fun. Nia's lips turned down slightly in a frown, but she replied anyways. If you're sure, frowny face. She then turned off her phone and continued down the crooked sidewalk, feeling a bit paranoid about how dark it was at night. There were barely any streetlights here. Eventually, Nia was beginning to arrive at her destination. She spotted the familiar silhouette of her good friend Cat in the distance. Breathing a sigh of relief from finally not being alone, Nia called out to the other. Cat! Cat, in turn, looked up and smiled widely. Nia! They called, walking towards her, but then they sprinted. Oh boy. Nia chuckled nervously and braced for impact. Cat practically flew at her, jumping into her arms. Nia attempted to catch them, but her little bones could only hold so much weight, and they both went tumbling into the concrete pavement, not escaping without a few scratches. Pained laughter echoed through the empty streets. "Why do you do that every time?" Nia complained, trying to push Kat off of her now. "You took forever!" Kat shouted before getting up on their own. They extended a hand out to the other. "Now come on! I found something cool!" They flexed their fingers as a way of saying, "Hurry up!" Nia rolled her eyes. "What happened to hi, Nia? How are you?" She took Kat's hand in her own. "Hi, Nia! How are you? Now get your ass up and come on!" Kat replies, with a grin on their face. They hauled Nia up, nearly sending them flying again. It's funny how Kat, who was so iffy about this whole plan, seemed more excited than Nia. All right. Where are we headed anyways?" Nia dusted herself off, glancing around again. Suddenly, she was pulled up by a cat in a random direction. "Through the underbrush! I know a shortcut!" They claimed, strutting towards the dirt path through some bushes. Nia winced at all the dirt and possible bugs, but went along anyway. "You still haven't told me where we are going," Nia mentioned, stepping over a shrub and nearly yelping aloud when she saw a rather large spiderweb on a tree. Kat groaned and rolled their eyes. "Do you trust me?" they asked, turning towards Nia and raising an eyebrow. "Unfortunately," Nia mumbled and shot them a sarcastic smile. The other glared right back before they both erupted in giggles. Nia then piped up, "Did you ever finish that Rise marathon that you started?" Kat only hummed and shrugged in response. "I just started watching the movie. I'll finish it later, though." "Honestly," Nia started, "I only watched the Donnie-centric episodes, and I skipped the movie." Kat only laughed in response. "Why am I not surprised?" After a few steps more of walking, Kat smiled excitedly. "We're here!" they sang, pushing back a bush to reveal a convenience store. Nia's head tilted to the side as the building came into view. It was just some old, rundown-looking little shop that kind of gave her all the wrong vibes. "Not a convenience store. It's kind of like those stores at the gas stations, or Claire's. I passed it while I was heading to you, and it has Hello Kitty stuff. Let's check it out." Nia examined the rusty exterior of the store, grimacing at the cracks on the walls and the moss growing on them. "I don't know, Kat. This place looks, not great." Kat huffed defiantly. "You already forced me to accompany you as you run away from home. It's only fair we do something I want to do first, right?" They rested a hand on their hip dramatically. "I gave you multiple chances to back out, but sure, fair enough." Nia shrugged and followed the other inside, into the little decrepit-looking shop. The first thing she noticed when she entered was how much bigger it was on the inside. It looked on the inside. It wasn't huge, it was just bigger than she thought. It honestly wasn't as bad looking as it looked. But Nia was still on the edge. She skimmed around the store, looking down at the tiny aisle, and noticing that there was, in fact, a Hello Kitty stuff. Welcome, a rasping old elderly voice. Nia practically jumped out of her skin and whipped around to see what seemed to be a store employee. The woman was, well, old, but she has this casual aura to her. Her great hair was done nicely in a bun, and she had rectangular glasses. She wore a cream-colored blouse, and on it was a brooch or a pin of some kind. Hello?" Nia spoke cautiously, feeling awkward for flinching. The lady smiled, the corners of her eyes crinkling. She seemed to study Nia.
You look like you're a bit far from home,
she responded, folding her hands together while maintaining eye contact. Nia glanced around and frantically for Kat, who was indulging themselves in all the Sanrio merch they desired. She swallowed a lump in her throat.
I guess you could say that,
she mumbled, wishing desperately that she could exit this conversation. The old woman seemed to sense her discomfort, and she offered a comforting smile.
Well, look around and see what you might like.
And she propped herself up and left to the back. Nia let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding, and basically sprinted to where Kat had vanished. She turned the corner and saw her friend examining a little keychain. Kat blinked and looked up at the other.
Oh, hey! Where'd you go?
You left me! That lady at the front gives me the creeps, dude! She whined, pulling at Kat's wrist. When can we leave?
As soon as I finish shopping,
they answered.
Now shoot! I'm trying to figure out which one I should get.
Nia let out a strangled groan as she dragged herself away, leaving Kat with her stupid keychains. She walked back to the front of the store, glancing at where the old woman was. Thankfully, she was nowhere to be seen. Nia let out a quiet sigh of relief before turning to look ahead. She peeped into one of the aisles to check out what was there. Nia was met with crystal necklaces. Those ones that were cut in some sort of hexagonal shape.
Ooh!
Nia piped up, going into the aisle to get a closer look. Her eyes landed on a purple crystal that resembled amethyst. A small smile made its way onto the girl's face. As she held the necklace, her expression softened. It seemed like everything reminded her of him. Her stupid, fictional turtle crush. It was embarrassing to say out loud sometimes, but she couldn't care less. More often than not, she liked a fictional guy, so what?
Find anything you like, dear.
The woman suddenly appeared beside Nia. Her eyes squinted slightly as she smiled. Nia let out a small shriek, then instantly covered her mouth in embarrassment.
Oh, sorry. Did I startle you?
She questioned, but Nia quickly shook her head.
No, you just, I'm just a bit jumpy tonight, I guess.
She laughed a bit awkwardly, gripping at the ends of her hair. A nervous stim of hers. She avoided eye contact like the plague. The woman gazed sympathetically at the younger one.
Is something the matter?
She asked. Nia fumbled with her hands. Oh, it's been a long day, she sighed, glancing back to where Kat was. Sorry I freaked out on you. She rubbed the back of her head.
Oh, that's quite all right, dear.
The elder spoke with a knowing smile. She moved her gaze to the shelf in front of them.
Interested in these, dear?
She chuckled, eyes shining.
My daughter used to love this stuff.
The woman picked up a necklace with a stone that resembled amethyst and handed it to Nia.
Purple suits you,
she smiled. Nia felt herself relax a bit, subconsciously smiling. Thank you, Miss... She trailed off.
Oh, it's Miss Chio.
The other, Miss Chio, replied with a smile. Nia reciprocated the gesture with a smile of her own. Thank you, Miss Chio. I'm Nia, by the way, she stated a bit awkwardly. Nia felt a bit bad for judging Miss Chio. This lady seemed pretty nice. Miss Chio began walking back towards the front, and Nia was inclined to follow. In fact, part of her felt like Miss Chio expected her to, too. It was almost as if any nerves or distrust that she may have felt about the odd lady melted away as she followed. Though, of course, her anxiety was still there, just slightly less apparent. She felt safe. Well, as safe as one can feel in a rundown retail store this late at night. Miss Chio went behind the front desk while Nia stood there idly, taking a better look at her surroundings.
So, Miss Nia, what made you run away from home,
Miss Chio suddenly asked, that same knowing smirk on her face. Nia's eyes grew a bit wide in alarm. How did you know I... But she was cut off by a wave of the other's hand.
I was a teenager too once, always wanting to run off. So, what's your reason for leaving home?
Nia hesitated for a moment, then sighed. She figured she had nothing to lose. What was Miss Chio gonna do? Tell her mom? If I'm honest, I hate living with my mom. So many rules and restrictions. I just want to be free, you know? Plus, it's not like I'm leaving forever. Miss Chio nodded in understanding.
Well, wherever you're going, get there safely, alright, dear?
The other just smiled and nodded. A slight glimmer caught Nia's eye. She blinked as her eyes landed on the beautiful milky white crystal wrapped in a small brown rope. The rope came up into a necklace with a golden hook at the end of it. It was just lying there on the back counter. Hey, what's that over there? Nia asked, tilting her head while leaning on the counter. She gestured to the lazily luminescent stone behind the other. Miss Chio turned to the large crystal necklace. With a slow inhale, she replied,
Oh, that old thing?
She went over to retrieve it.
It was a family heirloom of sorts.
Nia simply grinned. Cool! What kind of crystal is it? Quartz? Miss Chio just laughed.
No, not quartz. This crystal is one of a kind. Well, one of its kind. I used to have its little twin, a black crystal, just like this one. But I lost it.
Her expression fell into a small, sad smile. Nia offered the older woman a sympathetic smile. Who knows? Maybe it'll turn up. If I see anything like it, I'll get it to you. That seemed to cheer Miss Chio up a bit. She let out that sweet little laugh of hers.
Oh, you remind me so much of my little Emiko.
She turned back to retrieve the crystal.
Always trying to help someone.
She cupped the stone in her hand. With a smile, Miss Chio extended her hands out to Nia.
Here,
she said, holding out the crystal to the other.
I think you could take better care of it than me.
Nia sputtered wildly. What? Me? Wait, isn't this like your family heirloom thing? I can't just take it, she yelped, waving her hands around. Miss Chio only smiled and took Nia's hand in hers.
I think I can trust you,
she replied simply. Nia wordlessly blinked and looked down at the jewel now in her hands. The elder only chuckled.
I'm far too old to keep looking after it anyway.
The crystal in Nia's hand felt electric in a way. It was a feeling that she couldn't quite place. It was like the shard was buzzing with energy.
Take it,
Miss Chio whispered with a small smile.
On the house.
Nia was still in disbelief. Thank you, she smiled. You know, Miss Chio, you really made my day, night. The girl chuckled as she threw on the necklace. It was heavier than it looked, that's for sure. Miss Chio chuckled in response.
It's nice to come across some kind souls these days,
she sighed.
Now, it's quite late. Shouldn't you two get going?
Nia nodded. Yeah, we'll be on our way. She then turned to call to her friend behind her. Yo, Kat! You almost done over there? Kat did nothing but send a silent thumbs up as a response. They stared thoughtfully at what bag of chips stood by before they seized some jalapeno chips and skedaddled over to the front counter.
"Just these, please,"
they sang, and placed a bag of chips, a drink, and 3 Sanrio keychains on the desk.
"How much do I owe ya?"
The older woman only smiled and replied,
"Just take it, honey. Make sure you both get home safe eventually."
Miss Chio then put the items in a plastic bag and then pushed them across the counter.
"Oh wait, for real?"
Kate stared in surprise but then shrugged.
"Thank ya."
They looked at Nia, signaling that they're finally ready to go. Nia turned back to the elder behind the desk.
"Well, we'll be on our way,"
she sighed, offering a kind smile to the other.
"It was really nice to meet you, Miss Chio."
Miss Chio said nothing, but smiled, and waved the pair goodbye as they exited the store. Nia glanced at the stone again, holding it and feeling the same static spark between her fingers. A wave of nausea washed over her. She blinked drowsily in an attempt to fight the sudden tiredness. She looked back at Kat. "Hey, Comet, you think we can still make it to the beach on time?" Nia trailed off as she saw Kat turn around, staring at the store behind them. They looked almost puzzled. "What's up?" Nia asked. But Kat only shook their head and walked back to Nia's side. The other narrowed her eyes but then shrugged. The two made their way to their next location, chatting about their plans for the summer. "I sure hope Rise gets a season 3. Do you think Netflix might pick it up?" Nia asked, sipping on a Capri Sun she snagged from her backpack. "Strawberry kiwi, because that's the best flavor." Kat, who was sipping on a Pacific cooler, replied with a shrug.
"Man, I hope so."
Nia kicked a loose pebble on the sidewalk, nearly tripping while doing so. She had a slight sway in her step, which caught the attention of her friend.
"You okay?"
Kat asked, placing a comforting hand on Nia's back. Nia nodded. "Yeah, just tired. I've been feeling all funky ever since we left the store." A funny idea popped into her head. What if that crystal magic was magical or something? Nia internally laughed at the idea. Hopefully she didn't jinx herself. Nia continued to stumble over her own feet despite her reassurances that she was fine.
"Do you just want to go home?"
Kat asked as they held her up, attempting to help her walk. Nia would have answered, but a deafening, high-pitched ringing echoed in Nia's ears. She felt like the life was being drained out of her. She was fine a minute ago. What happened? Nia's eyes landed on the white crystal round her neck. It almost seemed to give off a soft glow. She wouldn't have questioned it. Maybe it was the trick of the light. But then the soft glow turned harsh, making her squint at the brightness. "What in the—" Nia whispered to herself. Not that she could hear much over the loud ringing in her ears. As the crystal glowed brighter, it started to levitate. She blinked rapidly, thinking she had finally lost all her marbles. "Am I tripping, or is that thing—" Nia turned to her friend, who looked just as horrified. Kat took 2 steps away from Nia, causing her to stumble a bit. The crystal had floated high enough to hover a few inches away from her face. Well, she jinxed it. Nia heard voices in her head, voices that weren't her own. Whispers, cries, pleads. She tilted her head inquisitively, and out of curiosity lifted her hand to touch the stone. As soon as her fingertips came in contact with it, the electric feeling returned. For a second, it almost felt nice, new, but it quickly became overwhelming. Nia yelped out in pain. Nia couldn't see what was happening around her, just feeling all too many things at once. She felt despair that wasn't hers, worry, sorrow, panic, most of which didn't belong to her. And in the midst of it all, she felt a new feeling. A feeling of change. Things were changing. In front of her, something flashed, then flickered, then sparked. A swirling circle of what seemed to be pure white lightning formed. Specks of gold littered the neutralness of the white, and in the center seemed to be the galaxy itself. The dark purples and blues contrasted beautifully against the white and gold. A portal? Common sense told her to run away from it, to run as fast and as far as she possibly could. But she couldn't. Something drew her to it. A force she couldn't possibly understand. Nia thought she could just vaguely hear the yells of her friend. The frantic pleas of her to stop and not get any closer. But the other voices were so much louder. She took a step, then two. Nia kept approaching the gateway, her head dipped to the side as her pain and consciousness slipped away. Taking a swayed step, Nia reached a hand out into it. Everything around her was telling her to go. Go! And she did. Nia only remembered falling into warm white. She had blacked out the second after.